Well, it is Thursday. Nicholas Gibbs is not going to be here tonight because he's missed on Tuesday, but he's not going to be here on Thursday. He's going to be here tomorrow night.
That's
So
good.
that's something I want to let everybody know that Nicholas will be on Friday night. I really wanted to have him on this week if at all possible. But Bradford Ferguson, what is your take on the tariffs? What do you, what do you think is going to happen? What do you think has happened? But wait a minute, we're going to do that later. We're going to tease people. We're going to
Mm,
come back to the we're going to come
mm,
back to the tariffs later.
Okay.
Okay? We're going to come back to the tariffs later because we are going to talk first about if I had the right script up. So now that I've found at least some of what I wanted to talk to you about today,
Oh,
Dan
well,
said, according to your X account today, he says, we knew first quarter Tesla deliveries would be soft, but these numbers were bad. We're not going to look at these numbers with rose-colored glasses. They were a disaster on every metric. Refresh issues, but brand crisis key. The time has come for Musk, that fork in the road moment for Tesla. I could just hear him saying it. I can hear his voice. You responded, I first invested in Tesla on April 26, 2019, 2 days after Dan Ives called Tesla's quarterly report the worst quarterly report of any company I've covered in the last 20 years.
mm,
That was a pretty good response. So talk to me. What are you thinking about Tesla right now? What are you thinking about Dan Ives' comment? He's a
oh,
bull.
yeah, let me take you back to April 24th of 2019.
Okay.
So that was 2 days after Autonomy Day,
Okay.
and it was nothing new to the Wall Street analysts, apparently, Autonomy Day back then. And Tesla had their earnings report, and we found out that they left 10,000 cars on ships because it was their first quarter shipping cars to Europe from the United States. And they didn't fully get them offloaded and in the hands of customers.
Right. Uh-huh.
So it was a disaster. And this is when we decided to buy. It was for other reasons, so we could excuse, Tesla, not getting it right that quarter, or that kind of thing. So we bought because of Tesla's scale and in batteries and EVs. Seeing the Gigafactory in Shanghai going up quickly, and just also the strategy they're taking with self-driving. So Dan Ives, he's been pretty strong on Tesla,
Very
but
strong.
but then he's gotten into this whole brand damage thing. I would like to call it brain damage, because I think Wall Street analysts, they want an excuse to lower their price targets, and or lower the rating from a buy to a neutral or whatever, or, strong buy or top pick list or whatever to a not on that list anymore. Um, so I think they're wanting some excuses maybe for their clients, because maybe they got them excited about Tesla stock. So that's why I'm being a little bit critical.
Yes. So what about now? How do you make the comparison to now? Given that we have another difficult quarter, according to Dan, a rough quarter. Would you be initiating purchases of Tesla if you weren't in Tesla today?
Yeah, I would. So, not financial advice. I do like the reward to risk ratio. So I think it's very favorable. I think the overall business that's in front of us today is undervalued in cars and Megapack, not even including Robotaxi and Optimus. So I think those are like free call options that you have on Tesla stock. I think we're still in that kind of situation. Also, right now, like thinking about 2020, Tesla got stronger during the crisis that
Yeah.
happened.
Mhm.
I think they will get stronger if there's some kind of crisis around the tariffs or some kind of big change around the tariffs, where I think other automakers will suffer more. And Tesla's, I believe, is pulled ahead in the quality of their product. People don't know how good it is today. I just had someone visit me from the CBOE, and they were talking about different volatility products they have and all these different, research things they have. And at the end of the meeting, I took the guy on an FSD ride. He had never been in a self-driving Tesla, and just blown away, completely blown away by how good version 13 was.
Yeah, well, it blows everybody away now because it is that good, and so it is
Yes.
interesting that more of these folks that make a living at this haven't apparently actually gotten in the vehicle and found out
Yeah.
how amazing it is.
So back in 2019, what was an open secret was Giga Shanghai. Tesla was building that. Um, I thought that the Model 3 would be successful in China, and Wall Street didn't think so. Adam Jonas came out and said that at most in any given year they would sell 71,000 Teslas of any kind in
Right.
China, which was ridiculous to me at the time. Um, it seems like every week there's a new Wall Street analyst or celebrity that's taking their first ride in Tesla FSD and, amazed by it because they don't know about this. But the version 13 has been super awesome since the end of December.
Mhm,
It
mhm.
came out in early December, but once they ironed out those wrinkles, it's been really good. So that's 3 months, and
Yeah.
it's like our secret.
It's our secret. And waiting for version 14 or 13 or whatever it's going to be,
Mhm.
kind of the final, if you will, final version before we get to June. What about energy? I know you put up a big chart showing kind of the energy story. I think somebody
Yeah.
else, the two Cern, I think also put up a chart showing that we really have a solid in other words, we're growing
Mhm.
even without the cars growing. The energy sector is growing and it's more profitable.
Yeah, and I'm going to share this right now.
Okay.
So, this is the smoothed out version where you're looking at the trailing 12 months or trailing 4 quarters. And so we see a very clear exponential here.
Right.
Um, so this shows the progress. But I would say, while the chart's really impressive, I did note that same day that we expected higher than 10 gigawatt hours.
But
I
I,
know you were a little hopeful for like 13 or 14.
yes, I was.
And I think some people had the excuse for the stock going up yesterday that, oh, well, the energy storage numbers were better than expected. And I guess, some people differed with their projections, but I thought it came about in line with, maybe what Wall Street was expecting. So,
That's probably true because, I'm
yeah,
the optimist, I'm
you
the
are.
optimist of the decade. So, but still, I'm looking at 10 gigawatts of capability in Lathrop and then another three, roughly gigawatts of capability in the power walls. So,
Yeah.
so 13 would be a so-called full production quarter, but we know about all this bookkeeping thing that happens with regard. So we don't know if they're capable really of hitting 13. Maybe that's a question for the upcoming call. Can they really produce 10 gigawatts in Lathrop? And I think we've already heard that they can do the 3 gigawatts of power walls. So what is the real number for Lathrop? And now we'll be adding in, of course, the new facility in China, and then eventually Texas as well. So huge potential for
Mhm.
adding to that number.
Yeah, so we hope to get better eyes on Lathrop soon, but it's going to be hard for us to really get eyes on Giga Shanghai. We're I think we're all thinking it's at least double what Lathrop is going to be as far as the production capability, but I think Tesla like slowed everybody down. It's like, oh, it's 40
Or,
from Giga Shanghai.
but he said combined, it could be 100.
Okay.
Yeah, combined.
So I guess they're setting expectations. Maybe their battery supply is going to be a bit constrained. Also you need the power electronics for that, so you need the inverters.
Right.
So maybe the combination of that's a bit constrained for now.
Yeah, okay. So Tesla has held up very well this week. Some people thought it was because Elon was going to be coming back soon. Some people thought it was because of the energy number being
Mhm.
better than expected, or at least within line of what was expected. I've heard a couple of other reasons. Like I was, oh well, just the idea that this is Gary Wong, Brian Wong.
Mhm.
It feels like that Tuesday was bad news, all cooked in, all baked in. And so from now on, it's just going up. And then I added in my theory, which is that we've got new conservative money. So people that have not been in the stock, we saw a lot of new money coming in. I'm thinking it's probably from conservative investors, retail investors who are new to the stock, and so they're gung ho. They're going to be like we were, a few years ago.
Mhm.
And any one of those is possible. What are you thinking? And do you think that Tesla's at the bottom?
I agree it's held up better. If you look today, typically when the market's down, Tesla is down two or three times what the market is down. Um, and essentially today is the same percentage, about like 5.5% for the Nasdaq, which is one ferocious move.
I think it's
That's
the biggest numerical move ever for the Nasdaq.
yeah.
I heard that. Yeah,
And so you mean like the dollar
the dollar.
change, yeah. Percentage change is not the biggest, but it's still pretty, that's a big 1 day move. And Tesla was about 5.5%. So yeah, we're not surprised that Tesla is maybe starting to outperform the indexes.
Mhm, mhm.
Um, so we felt like coming into this production and delivery number that psychologically the people who wanted to sell going into it would have sold. Um, in that, potentially there'd be a positive reaction after the number just because the sellers were done essentially.
Right, right.
And that's kind of what we saw. So um, the whole the whole psychology of this first quarter thing wasn't a surprise to me. So I got on your channel in mid-February and was talking about how um, the media is going to bash Elon Musk and say it's a political boycott.
Yeah,
And that's what we saw in the articles. CNBC had in its article that had probably, bare minimum 30 sentences, if not like 40. There was one sentence in the middle, all by itself, that said, Model Y changeover, causing some production issues, but they didn't quantify that.
right, right.
So, we all know it's a supply issue, but the media wasn't talking about it.
South Korea said today, or people in South Korea were saying that it's now a 5-month wait for a Model Y.
Hmm.
That's a pretty stunning number.
Yeah.
I don't know if that can extrapolate to other markets, but in no in short order, they just put up the non-launch version, and once they
Hmm.
put up the non-launch version, it went to a 5-month wait. So
Hmm.
we'll see. I mean, some of the countries in Europe coming out and saying it's the number one car in March, number one car period, not number one
Hmm.
BEV, but number one car. So,
Wow. Okay.
Spain, I think, was up dramatically.
Mhm.
England was up. Norway was number one car.
Yeah, looks like a boycott to me, right, Randy?
Is that right? Everything's pointing to boycott. Okay, now,
It's a great product. So I have one of them.
yeah,
It's a great product.
yeah,
Just very quiet, smooth, has the more of a luxury feeling with the interior. So it's a complete package, and you add that on top of, already being the best-selling car in the world, and you have a monster on your hands.
that's right. That's right. Okay, so we've got this tariff thing. I'm going to let you start. What is your general impression right now today, rather than me prompting you? Just I'll let you
Uh,
go. Where do you think we are on the tariffs? Do you think they're going to last forever? Do you think there'll be negotiations? What do you think?
so I think we've all meandered around the tariff discussion, and yes, I think some people have been in the camp the whole time that tariffs are bad. But I think others who are curious or open-minded have kind of meandered that, oh, it's a negotiating tactic, it's good, etc. Um, I think that the way they set up the tariffs were they're very high percentages.
Right,
A lot. I think Japan is one of the lowest, and I believe the percentage is like 20%, something like that, or
right,
maybe
right.
24, and maybe Europe's at 20, something like that. But then on top of it, it's 25% on automobiles.
Yeah,
So they're very high, very substantial. I think it's designed to get these other countries to come to the table and to negotiate.
right.
Whereas before, China, even 20% tariff really didn't get, to our knowledge. Maybe something else happened that we don't know, but to our knowledge, China really didn't negotiate much when Trump bumped them up to 20%. But if it's at like 65% now or whatever, China's gonna come to the table, I guess. I mean, I I'd hate for this to be like a global tariff war.
Yeah.
I don't think that's gonna happen. I think that's too painful and too ugly for these other countries, the continents.
Yeah, so there's a bunch of different the people who are against it, and shockingly, it's not like the Democrats are not so against it as they are in some other
Right.
states. They're not really coming out and saying, "Oh, it's the most horrible thing." And in fact, I think you pointed out that there's a lot of videos up right now of previous leadership in the Democratic Party, praising the idea of tariffs, or at least
Yeah.
condemning the idea of the difference between our
Yeah.
and everybody
It,
else.
and one of those is a 1996 video of Nancy Pelosi showing a chart kind of like Ross Perot style,
Yeah,
where she showed the most favored nation tariff on China for the US was 3%, but that China was charging the US something like 34%. And she says something like, that's not reciprocal, or how is this reciprocal? And I was shocked to see that video.
yeah. Well, there's a few like that, but the more thoughtful individuals are making some arguments that I think do need to be addressed. So one of those is, look, you can't, and I made this argument 2 weeks ago, maybe even with you,
Mhm.
that you can't, that you that on the one hand, Trump is saying, I want to raise $600 billion a year in tariff taxes,
Mhm.
result of these coming into the country. And then at the same time, he's saying, I want to onshore all this production, which to the extent that you onshore the production, then those will be products that won't be coming into the country to be tariffed. So
Right.
you're not going to get both. And some people are making the argument, they're couching the argument in terms like, well, yeah, he can't have it both ways. And I don't know. I was kind of thinking, well, maybe you'll get a little of this and a little of that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right that the answer is somewhere in between. And likely these percentages will come down over time. But I think it's going to be those that decide to come to the table.
Yeah. And uh, I'm gonna forget his name. Anyway, one of the pundits today said, knowing Trump, and this was somebody who's known Trump for a very, very long time, said probably a good idea to come early. You should probably be one of the first to come and negotiate, kind of like the prisoner's dilemma. You better get in first because the ones that are the last are the ones that do some attempt to do some kick, or what do you want to call it?
Call it a walk on the wild side. How about
Yeah, that's
that?
right. Yes, you want to be first in line. But anyway,
Mhm.
um, the other thought I had, and I wish I had Jeff Lutz in here because he knows this production stuff way better than I do, even though I'm a manufacturer. I moved my manufacturing business, 25,000 square feet, wasn't small. I moved my 25,000 square foot manufacturing business in 3 days from one warehouse to another.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of people out there saying, well, you can't move these companies just like that. And I'm like, yes, you can. Now, if you've got, a million square feet, obviously it's a lot different. But
Right.
a lot of these companies over in China and in Vietnam and wherever else, a lot of these companies are smaller. And whether it's 3 days or whether it's a month to disassemble your manufacturing equipment, put it onto a ship it over the United States, unload it, and put it into a new manufacturing facility. The truth is, for me, on my moves, and I moved it a couple, 3 times, on my moves, it took longer to put in the plumbing into the facility in order to handle the equipment than it did to move the equipment, set it up, and get it running again. So I think people are a little confused about how long it takes to move a factory if moving the factory is the smartest thing to do.
Well, you are an optimist. A slight counterpoint to that is Tesla bought these machines to make LFP batteries from CATL and to make them in Nevada. That was a year ago.
Yeah. Well, that seems like
So it's still not, that line isn't working yet. So that's been a year. That's Tesla.
yeah,
It was a working line
yeah,
in China allegedly when they bought
allegedly.
it and had it moved over. Um, and it's not working yet to our knowledge.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think in general, like things will take like a year to 18 months, but I agree that for a lot of products, it's not, rocket science or
Right. Yes.
transmission science or car science or whatever, where it's a lot simpler.
Right. Yeah, no,
And
batteries would be complex. But that's another question that should be asked at the upcoming earnings call is what happened to that 40 gigawatt hours? Because I'm sure we could use those right now. I'm sure that would be a very helpful. And it doesn't seem like if it was up and running that it should take a year to get that baby going. I don't understand that one.
yeah, I don't either. So yeah, I but I know it's hard to make batteries. So
Yes.
Tesla's found that out with
Yes.
the 4680, right?
No doubt about it. Yeah, and then you've also got the question. I liked one of the comments that you made, which is, why is it fair for everybody else to have these tariffs and it isn't
Mhm.
fair for us to have higher
Right.
tariffs? It seems just, like that would be okay. My response to you was, have you ever tried to have somebody who's a codependent get their codependent elements taken away from them? And it usually results in a really bad time, a really bad war. So I think it's not really a matter of fairness. It's what they're used to, and they like it, and they don't want it to go away. So they're
Yeah.
they're putting up a fight. Well, so
I think also people in the US who are against it, they don't want the chaos. They don't want the ups and downs and the uncertainty um to go through that while the negotiations happen or we go through the process.
yeah,
I think that's the other piece to it.
Yeah, I think the most interesting one has been brought up a few times. Again, Jeff would be great to answer this, but you know, okay, what would an iPhone cost to make in the US? You know, I mean,
Mhm.
what would it actually cost? Because I've seen people say, well, you can have it made in the US, cost $3,500. I don't think so. You know, maybe 12, maybe 14. I don't know, instead of 1,000. But I'm not sure that it would be a lot more. I'm not sure we could find the hands.
So something he alluded to in the space was that they're not very efficient making them.
Right,
So it's a little more labor intensive than it should be.
right.
That's what he said in the space today. So one thing Matt and I are wondering about is supply chain. And I talked to my brother last night. He works for a car parts supplier.
Mhm.
And one thing he told me gave me a lot of encouragement was that if you're the car manufacturer, you really need your parts supplier to succeed, and you actually need them to be profitable.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so the car manufacturer is constantly checking with the parts supplier to be sure that they're profitable. And if for some reason you're not profitable, they'll send an expert over to find out why if they don't get a good answer from you. Because if you're not profitable, then the next thing might be that you shut down and you're no longer giving your parts to the car manufacturer.
Yes.
They'll also send over the expert to see if just something's wrong with your process and you can't make it profitably. And then they'll work on a plan B, getting a plan B up and running, and then eventually
Yes.
they
Yes.
kick you to the curb.
Yes.
Um, so I actually was very encouraged by that because that means, you know, uh, car manufacturers are very proactive with their suppliers. And we got a good sense of that when Tesla held their marathon and investor day on March 1st. I think that was 2023,
Yeah.
um, where they unveiled Mexico at the end, but we met with the supplier team
Yeah.
and heard from them. So I feel like the parts you know, potentially the parts suppliers will be okay in the tariffs, that it won't necessarily be like some huge disaster, but there is going to be quite a bit of pain.
Yeah, well, the thing is again, most people who haven't been in the business don't know that your supply chain, as much as Elon Musk would like to have his suppliers all within a few miles of the building, as opposed to all around the world, that isn't how anybody else thinks. And it maybe he's
Mhm.
probably smarter, and it probably makes a whole lot more sense to do it that way. But I was, again, I was a little guy in terms of manufacturing. We bought products that we made in the United States. We commonly bought the tooling from China,
Mhm.
bought the packaging from China because it was so much cheaper. Sometimes there would be parts of an item that we would buy from China, even though the rest of the product was made in the United States. Also Mexico, same thing.
Mhm.
So it's not unusual even for less complicated issues in a car or an iPhone to have your supply chain all over the world based on who's got the best price. And
Yeah.
so as this shifts, if you're shifting the manufacture of a motor or a transmission from Mexico or from South Korea or from Japan or from Italy to the United States because better to make it there, that doesn't
Mhm.
mean you're still not buying the valves from Italy
Right.
until you can move it over to the United States. So only that part is subject to the tariff. So
Mhm.
there's a lot of ways to play this game. I've been in situations so many times where all of a sudden your supplier goes out of business or your supplier runs out of raw material or
Mhm.
your raw material supplier is all of a sudden got a problem and it's going to shut you down. And this is normal in business. Sure, the bigger businesses plan further in advance
Mhm.
and are able to have plan Bs and plan Cs all lined up. But small people, the folks that are doing 10 or 20 or $100 million a year, no, you're commonly ending up with these disasters, and they might include the currency in another country changing, or the tariff in another country changing,
Hmm.
or as we saw 2 years ago, or even last year with the Houthis, all of a sudden container prices doubling or tripling, which
Yeah.
dramatically can change the price of your landed product. So this is not like something that companies aren't used to. It's normal.
Hmm.
So what about the market? Do you think the market is I mean we're at 10%, 11% on the S&P at this point off the all-time highs after 2 years in a row of 20 plus percent gains.
Yeah.
You heard me saying over and over again that I wanted a 10% correction months ago. I mean, starting like 5 months ago, 6 months ago, I was saying that. So a 10% correction after 2 years in a row of 20% up is not the end of the world, but you'd think it was based on based on what we're hearing in the financial press and on television. What do you think?
Yeah, we're actually light in our equity allocation for non-rebellionaire clients, just people who are like 60/40, 70/30 type investors where like 70% of their money's in stocks and 30% is bonds and fairly diversified and all that. But we did take quite a bit off the table. I think around when the Nasdaq was like down, maybe 13%, something like that. Um, it's hard to be on the lighter side of your allocation because, generally stocks are going to go up,
Yeah,
3 out of 4 years are going to go up.
right,
And for us to win to this, we have to buy back into the market at a lower price than where we sold.
right, right.
So that part's tricky. Um, I think over the very short term, I wonder about a continued reaction. So we had a very strong first day. I'm shocked the market was up yesterday, actually. Uh,
Yeah,
Given that there's such a strong reaction
yeah,
today, like yesterday we knew Trump was going to be speaking in the afternoon and
yeah.
putting on these tariffs. Maybe people didn't know how big they would be.
Oh,
So yeah, maybe that's a big piece of the negative shock, but we knew Trump was going to come out with all this.
right,
That's not a surprise.
right,
People have been talking about it since for a couple months. Maybe they figured they would flip-flop again and concede and delay another month or something like that. But they actually did it. So I think we may get a continued fear reaction in the markets that may go into Monday. Um, we'll see what happens, and it's interesting that today was a liquidation day. So we had Liberation Day yesterday, and
Nation state.
today was liquidation day. And what happens when you have a dash for liquidity is everything's down by like big percentages.
Right.
And there are very few names that are spared from that.
Mhm.
Um, and and so it's like almost indiscriminate selling.
Yeah, Costco was up.
Okay.
They were like the only one I saw that was up.
Do
It's,
they pay a dividend, Randy?
I don't know. I don't know why. I don't know why they were up. I didn't look into it. It was just interesting
Are
that.
they a dividend aristocrat or something?
So,
So it's uh, uh that's a clear fear thing, and I'm
VIX
not
is at
sure.
30. VIX is at
I,
30.
yeah, I'm not sure we're done with that yet. Um, it's a tricky game I'm playing, and I don't necessarily recommend it.
There was a couple of
Not financial advice. Go
price.
ahead, Randy.
A couple of the banks came out today. One, Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs. I can't remember exactly which ones, but one of them came out and said they are now 40% think there's going to be a recession, and the other one
Mhm.
said 60% recession. I thought that after the tariff thing yesterday, that their number is still in the 40 to 60% range was telling. They're not worried. They're not very worried about this.
Yeah, it's true. I don't think it's necessarily 95% either. So if,
Oh,
they were saying that too, I wouldn't necessarily believe it. Um, yeah, we'll see what happens, but I think I think a chunk of the selling is still like people letting politics drive their investment decision-making process. It's
right.
like who's managing your portfolio? Is it politicians? Is it the media, or is it you, or is it um who is it? And I think people are letting politics and the media drive their investments, and I don't think that's a good thing.
No,
I don't think that's smart. And so I think some of the people who are selling today were people who agree that uh these tariffs were clownish and how they were laid out and calculated.
yeah, yeah.
So they were probably selling stocks today. I
Well,
will admit, we did sell a stock today.
oh, did you?
Yeah, so we own a company called Lovesac, and they're a very efficiently run furniture business. And we won't get into the whole story, but they diverse a few years ago they diversified their supply chain of like the hard furniture, like the hard part of the furniture, not the covering or the cushion. And the hard part of the furniture came from China, so they diversified into something like, I'll get it wrong, but Vietnam and maybe Indonesia or something like that. So, all three of those are hit with high percentages. So we're just like, okay, we're selling
Oh,
this.
that one. Okay.
It was only down like 10% when we sold it. We think it'll be, um, far worse for the um, potentially.
Yeah, yeah.
It unless all three of those countries come to the table, or unless like, you know, only one of them comes to the table or whatever.
Well, Vietnam has come to the table. They've already said that they would completely eliminate all tariffs. Now, that doesn't mean that they also agreed to eliminate all subsidies and all currency manipulation and all the other
Yeah.
VATs and blah, 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 blah. I think the way Trump did it last time is they're going to be looking for even more than that. They're going to be looking for some kind of a number of dollars of imports from each of these countries in order to get the very best deal. They're going to have to
Mhm.
say, okay, we promise that we'll find a way to buy at least 10 billion from you next year, or 20 or 100, or
Mhm.
whatever it is, depending on the country. So I think that's probably going to one of the things we're going to see happen, because that's a great headline, and
Mhm.
Trump wants the headlines.
Yes.
I'm anticipating a headline a day. Starting tomorrow or Monday, I think we'll have a headline a day with some country who's agreed to a great deal for both countries rather.
Mhm.
I think that's what we're going to see. So, okay, what do
We're
you
gonna win so much, Randy.
so
We're
much
gonna get tired of winning.
so much winning. Okay, speaking of winning,
I joke, but this is a dicey situation. I take it seriously, okay?
yes, yes.
Um,
Yes.
and I don't know what's gonna happen, but we'll see.
Okay, but that's what I was just going to ask you. Where do you think we are in September, October? Do you think it's the Randy version of the golden age because he's the big optimist, and we'll have all these companies moving product over here. We'll have more exports going to some of these countries. We had General Motors today announce that they were going to increase production at one of their light truck factories.
Mhm.
So is that going to be the other headline that we're going to get between now and September? And by September, October, we're going to be like, wow, Trump, amazing what you've done.
So I'm gonna tell you how I feel in my body. So
There
I feel the fear right now. So
Okay.
I'm human. I feel it too. I feel the anxiety, etc. Yeah, I think we'd be coming out of it, especially on like the stock market side in September. You maybe things go on with the stock market, not as bad as today. Like that's not going to happen every day until like some culmination in June or whatever. But maybe the market stays weak for a couple of months. But uh, I guess that would end after a certain point. The market would be bouncing back, and people would be feeling better, and a lot of the uncertainty would be gone. So for the animal spirits to be unleashed, you need that certainty and that clarity. So I'm guessing I would guess that a lot of the tariffs would be off or reduced by
Mhm.
then. There still might be some holdouts, and I don't know if we quite get a golden age of America, but yeah, I'm curious when we start hearing about the External Revenue Service
Right. Yes. What they're,
collecting this.
yes, how much money they're getting in. Another
Yeah,
headline. Yeah. Yeah,
I
we
don't
hope.
know if this is Customs and Border Patrol that would be doing this because they're handling the smaller stuff that comes in on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Um, I'm curious how they're gonna functionally do it. Uh, so I'd love to hear some clarity on that, actually.
Right.
I think
Right.
that might give some people a little confidence and clarity.
Yeah, I think so. Again, if we use, I'm borrowing from Brian Wong again, who had this idea that as of yesterday, all the bad news is in. All the bad news is in on Tesla. There's no bad news coming. It's mostly positive catalysts. His theory would be part two theory of his theory would be all the bad news is in on the tariffs. On Doge, it's all in. We know what Doge is about now. We know what it isn't about. It's kind of all there. There's not going to be anything new Doge wise or new tariff wise that's going to be more negative than what we already know. So therefore, the highest potential is that we will have positive things like announcements about Vietnam or Israel or India who've already said they're willing to do this. But those will become firm and they'll be a headline. Okay, we've made our deal with Israel. We've made our
Mhm.
deal with India, and now that's firm. So each one of those should be positive and confidence building. So that's kind of again, Brian is not necessarily as optimistic as I am. So this is more of a futurist's analysis.
Mhm.
That's what Brian is, right? Is the
Yeah.
futurist, and he kind of sees that he's trying to see what would be the negatives that would drive the market lower or drive the confidence lower after Tuesday. So that's an interesting way to look at it.
I would agree uncertainty is very high right now. I think there could be more negative news. So I'm guessing there'll be some bankruptcies of some sort that happen because of this. Where those come from, we don't know. What if there are some banks that run into problems because of this? I don't know why or how that would happen, but there's a potential that could happen. Um, so you might have more negative news, but potentially that doesn't add uncertainty. I, I think issues with the banking system would add uncertainty, but like maybe part suppliers going under or whatever, or something in some supply chain, provided it's not like something that like baby food civilization relies on, provided
Toilet paper again.
toilet paper, provided it's not something like that. I think it would shrug that off. But if there were some kind of issues with the banks, I think that could be a problem. Maybe there's an issue with currencies, and financing loans around currency trade that could cause some issues with the banks.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm not saying that there won't be some surprises, some negatives, on an individual level, but I think, again, we got to keep in mind this is 14% of our economy is imports.
Mhm.
It's only 14%. a lot of those the number one trading partners are Canada and Mexico, and I have a feeling that those are already well along the way to being solved.
as
Um,
far as the deal.
as far as the deal, China
Mhm.
is our third biggest trading partner. I think maybe Japan is fourth. Germany maybe is fifth, maybe a little bit lower. I'm not sure. But anyway, so you've got those countries. Oh, I know North Korea or South Korea is there. You've got these countries that we need to deal with, and I guess China would be the most important for most importers.
Mhm.
Um, I think the Vietnams and the South Koreas, yeah, but I don't think that Trump cares whether clothing manufacturing comes back to the United States. So I mean, there might be some situations where there's entire industries that are not part of the strategic problem. Because
Right.
because you may have heard me, I don't know if you and I ever talked about it, but Larry and I had a number of conversations about this, and I turned out to be right for a change. I mean, Larry's usually right.
Mhm.
I said from the beginning, this is about strategic, both military and economic. You can't have all 100% of your pharmaceuticals being made in India and Pakistan, because if you go to war and for some reason India and Pakistan's on the other side, you got no pharmaceuticals. You can't
Mhm.
have a country without pharmaceuticals. It's just impossible. And so these kinds of things had to be solved, and these were way at the top of Trump's list. These two things that were top of his list were the strategic aspects and the middle class being hollowed out.
Mhm.
Those two things, people don't think of it that way, but that was the two pressure points that he was concerned about. The rest of it is just the technique for getting there.
Yeah. The conversation hasn't happened for about 10 years, but for, I don't know, from 2000 to 2015, we've been talking about offshoring and the hollowing out of America. And I do think that needs to be fixed.
Yeah, 100%. I
Yeah.
can, I can tell you again, as a manufacturer of an item in the United States, it was always on my mind whether to offshore what I was making.
Mhm.
It was 100%. If could they make it cheaper? Okay, send it
Yeah.
off. And we brought in. We had nobody knows about this because they only think I did bicycle water bottles. We had the Snoopy bicycle license and the Garfield bicycle license.
Ooh.
Made Snoopy horns and bells and all kinds of fun things. Where? In China. Okay. So, so those couldn't be made in the United States because they required lots and lots of little parts that had to all be part together. No, you're never going to make that in the United States.
Mhm.
But they could be under a new kind of dynamic. Again, whether the president, whether the administration cares about Snoopy horns, I don't think so. Okay.
Yeah.
What they care about is pharmaceuticals, steel, aluminum, cars,
Rare earths.
electronics. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Chips. Yeah, I
Mhm.
think that's what it's got to be. All right. Well, let's see. If I left anything out that you wanted to talk about, I can't remember because I
I'll
lost.
say this, I just thought of this and I I do want to thank you. You gotten us some attention for position we're hiring for, which is data engineer full slash full stack developer. And so we've gotten some good candidates from that and looking to complete the hiring process in the next week or two.
Yes,
Um, what just came to mind is this crisis will pass
yes, it will.
and we won't, America will not be destroyed. Trump is not in the process of destroying America. Even if you don't agree with his policies, they're not gonna take away real Social Security benefits or Medicare, Medicaid, etc., VA. Um, maybe it might look different when you go to get a medical test. Maybe you won't pay 3,000 at the hospital, but maybe you'll pay 400 to get it somewhere else or whatever. But it's going to be the same benefits and coverage, I believe.
Right.
So I I don't think they're gonna make things worse for entitlements. And I believe this time of change will pass, but pretty soon we'll get into the all the change that's going to happen because of AI automation, and that's why we're hiring for
Right.
a data engineer is to automate processes in our business and become more efficient, serve our customers even better.
Right. 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 Okay, then. Well, Bradford Ferguson, thank you as always for
Yeah.
doing this. And as you always say,
Let's get right to the numbers.
see ya. All right, let's see like everybody in the world knows what the numbers are today, right? There's no secrets to these numbers. The Tesla ended up down 5.47, as Bradford had just told us. The Dow was down 3.98%, Nasdaq down almost 6, 5.97, S&P down almost 5 at 4.84. And there you have it. The Magnificent Seven was all down. Apple 9%, Amazon 8, almost 9, Meta almost 9, and Nvidia almost 8. Cathie Woods were all down also. Most cases less, although yeah, pretty much. Well, PayPal was down 8. RK was down 8. Yeah, so it was a rough day for the Cathie Woods as well. All right, let's find out what's happening with the other numbers. Let's look at the bonds. And we start with the 10-year. We have still not been able to crack the 3.99 yet. In fact, we're up a little bit from where we were at the close today. We're sitting at 4.047, but that's still pretty darn close. So only need five basis points to get down into the threes. We've got oil down another 18 cents in the pre-market at 66.77. So that's a good number. Natural gas up a little bit, recovering after today, up to $4.15. That's pretty much where it had been prior to a lot of up and down over the last week. Gold up $15. It had been down strongly today, but now back up, sitting at 3,136. Silver up a little bit too, 0.13 at 32, but still well below the 35.50 that it was a couple of weeks ago. Copper down a little, has fallen under $5 for the first time in a while. So again, that would be an indication that some people think that there's going to be less commerce overall, which would impact the copper situation. The mixed dollar again, and Bitcoin down overall for the day, 33.39. It was down more, sitting at 83,120. And the futures, here we go on the futures at tonight. Actually, not that bad. The Dow down another 0.22, the S&P down 0.16, and the Nasdaq down 0.07. So actually, right now, looking like my theory and Brian's theory might be kind of right. Maybe we're done, but you never can tell. Well, it's probably going to be very news driven. Tomorrow we've got the employment numbers. My guess is the employment numbers are going to be fine. That's what I've been saying. I believe that's true, that they'll be good. And so we'll see how that impacts markets tomorrow. And of course, I will be on early tomorrow morning, as always, to take a look at what's going on there. I did not look. Let me go back to Tesla here in terms of the after hours. We've got up a little bit, 0.31%. That's like $7, 70 cents. So up a little bit. So that also holds to my theory. It's really Brian's theory. I just bought into it. I agreed with him. Okay, that's all I got right now. Coming up later tonight is Cern Basher. It's a very, very good one. We will be talking tariffs, of course, but we'll talk a lot of other stuff. This is a very good show, 7:45. Do not miss it. Last night, of course, as I mentioned earlier, this in the day, we had Jeff Lutz last night. Excellent, phenomenal show with Jeff. I wish I'd asked him those questions about moving a plant. Maybe I'll send him something and talk to you tomorrow morning about how easy or hard it would be to actually literally move some of these facilities from Mexico into the United States, or even from overseas into the United States. That'd be kind of an interesting conversation to have. All right, that's all I got for you. It's been great talking to you.